I was staring into the mirror of my hotel suite, mascara wand in hand, but my fingers wouldn't stop shaking. The smudge beneath my right eye was barely noticeable, but I saw it, just like I saw through everything else tonight. The dress clung too perfectly, tailored silk in a shade of deep forest green, professional, controlled, unapologetically elegant. The kind of dress you wear when you've spent your whole life trying to look like you belong in a room that's never wanted you in it. I was Dr. Camille Ross, 35 years old, molecular biologist, lead research director at Novagene Institute in Denver. I'd presented at global medical summits, developed genetic pathways that made headlines in The Lancet, and led a team that was rewriting how we understand immune adaptation to environmental toxins. And yet, tonight, I was afraid. Not of science, not of public speaking, but of a ballroom full of people ready to celebrate a man who never once celebrated me. Behind me, resting on the hotel dresser, was a small square box, navy blue wrapped in silver ribbon. Not extravagant, not loud. But inside was something that had been with me for over 2 decades. Something small, powerful, personal. The kind of gift you give when you're done pretending. I glanced back at the mirror and tried again to rehearse the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Camille Ross, daughter of Edgar Ross. Tonight we honor a man who's— No. The words turned to ash in my mouth. My chest tightened, because the truth was, I wasn't here to honor my father. I was here to stop bleeding. Some wounds aren't loud. They fester. They whisper things into the cracks of your confidence until you start wondering if maybe you really were the problem all along. My father, Edgar Ross, had dedicated 40 years to the oil and gas empire he helped build, CFO of Ross and Crane Energy, a man respected by CEOs, politicians, and defense contractors. A man who raised 2 sons to follow in his path and 1 daughter to, well, not exist. Growing up, he never said, "I'm disappointed in you." He never had to. His silence did the job better than words ever could. When I got my PhD, he sent a thumbs-up emoji. When my research was cited by the World Health Organization, he asked me if it was real science or just theory stuff, and now I was back in Savannah. For the gala. For the finale of a man who built a legacy in black gold while bearing the only child who ever dared to think in color. I sat on the bed. My fingers traced the edge of the ribbon on the box. My heart beat like a countdown. I had faced media scrutiny, scientific skeptics, and university boards, but none of them scared me the way my father's indifference did. Because what if nothing I did ever mattered? Worse, what if it did, and he just didn't care? My phone buzzed. A message from my closest friend, Kira. You don't owe him anything, but if you go, say what you need to say. I looked back at the mirror, smoothed the folds of my dress. I didn't know if I'd speak tonight. I didn't even know if I'd stay. But I knew this. If he ignored me again tonight, I'd make sure it would be the last time. People love to romanticize childhood. Bedtime stories, laughter around the dinner table, birthday candles blown out with wishes whispered into frosting. I don't have those kinds of memories. I remember rules, expectations, silence so heavy it could crack your ribs if you breathed too loudly. The Ross household in Savannah wasn't a home. It was a statement. Everything gleamed. The lawn edged like it had been trimmed with tweezers. Dinner was served at 6 sharp. You didn't speak unless spoken to. You didn't cry. You didn't ask why. And you sure as hell didn't disobey Edgar Ross. My father believed in success. Not the soft kind that comes with fulfillment or joy. The sharp kind. Power, status, control. To him, emotions were liabilities, and curiosity was a waste of time unless it could be monetized. My brothers, Ryan and Luke, were made in his image. Ryan went military, rising fast through the officer ranks. Luke studied petroleum engineering and landed a position managing offshore platforms in the Gulf. They were loud, athletic, charismatic, and they made perfect sense to him. I didn't. I was the quiet one, the strange one, the girl who spent weekends dissecting frogs and staring into microscopes instead of going to football games. I collected data sets like other girls collected lip gloss. When I was 11, I won first prize at the regional science fair for isolating bacteria strains from lake water. I remember running home with my ribbon, breathless with pride. My mom cried. My dad asked, "Is that why the faucet water tastes weird lately?" He meant it as a joke. But I stopped entering science fairs after that. At 16, I got a scholarship to a pre-college summer program in biogenetics at Stanford. He barely glanced up from his Wall Street Journal when I told him. When I defended my PhD dissertation, a 300-page work on adaptive genetic response in toxic environments, he didn't even show up. He sent me a $50 Amazon gift card with the message, "Buy yourself something nice. Hey, congrats, kid." That was who he was. Not cruel, just absent. Emotionally AWOL. And yet, I kept trying. Every award, every breakthrough, every time my name appeared in another academic journal, some part of me hoped that maybe he'd forward the article, mention me at dinner, call me his daughter in a sentence that didn't end in, "She's doing biology stuff." He never did. I stopped expecting it, told myself I didn't need it. But then the invitation arrived. Thick paper, gold-embossed lettering. Ross and Crane Energy cordially invites you to the retirement gala, honoring Edgar Ross. Black tie, Hilton Savannah. I stared at it for a long time. I should have thrown it away. But some rusted piece of my heart still wanted to believe. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe, after 40 years, the man who defined legacy would finally say my name and mean it. I booked the flight, packed the green dress, wrapped the gift box. Not because I believed he had changed, but because I had. This time, I wasn't walking into that ballroom as the forgotten daughter. I was walking in to end a performance I'd been forced to play my whole life. The ballroom at the Hilton Savannah looked like something out of a corporate fairy tale. Marble floors polished to glass, tall gold candelabras, waiters in white gloves floating between tables like well-trained ghosts. Every detail screamed money, tradition, and legacy. His world. A looping slideshow projected across a massive screen on the far wall. Frame after frame of my father. Shaking hands with energy executives, standing proudly at oil rigs, posing beside his sons at charity golf tournaments. His name was everywhere, embossed on banners, engraved on commemorative crystal, embroidered on the chair covers. I watched, silent, as his face beamed in every photo. There wasn't a single image of his family Christmas, no family vacations, no home life. Definitely no Camille. I lingered by the entryway, clutching my purse like it was a shield. I spotted Mom across the room. She offered a quick, almost apologetic smile, the kind of glance that says, "I wish this were different, but it's not." That's when I heard the voice behind me. "Camille!" Ryan. He looked exactly how I remembered. Tan, polished, teeth a little too white. A walking recruitment poster for military glory. He pulled me into a hug that felt more like a press release. "Still working in, what was it, biotech? Or was it bugs in space?" I smiled thinly. "Still at Novagene, research division lead, human environmental genomics." "Right," he said, already zoning out. Luke appeared beside him, loosening his tie. "Dad says your work is like nature stuff, yeah? I mean, important in theory, but not the kind of thing that powers a country." I let out a small, rehearsed laugh. "Sure. Except we're developing gene therapies that can reverse toxin exposure in populations affected by oil spills. So, in a way, I guess we're just cleaning up your mess." Ryan raised an eyebrow, but chuckled. "Still got that sass, huh?" They drifted off before I could reply, patting backs and shaking hands, fully at home in a kingdom I never belonged to. And just like that, I was 12 again, standing at the dinner table with a mouthful of statistics and no one listening. A server walked by with champagne. I grabbed one, took a sip, and exhaled slowly. Then I saw him, Edgar Ross. My father stood near the head table, surrounded by executives and former government advisors. His deep blue suit matched the decor perfectly. His gestures were large, theatrical, a man who knew this was his stage. He laughed loudly, gripped shoulders, posed for photos. He clapped Luke on the back, whispered something into Ryan's ear that made him smirk. He even leaned in and kissed Mom's cheek, as if to play the part of loving patriarch. But he didn't see me. Not once. The organizer approached the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. The celebration is about to begin." I froze. I could have turned and walked out. But then, a gentle hand touched my elbow. "Please don't go." My mother's voice, quiet but desperate. "He'll say something. He has to. Tonight is for all of us." I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But somewhere in my chest, I already knew. This night wouldn't end in applause. It would end in ash. The lights dimmed, a hush fell across the ballroom, sweeping over the room like a cold wind. Conversations tapered off. Even the sound of glassware softened as guests turned toward the stage. On the screen, a slow montage began. Oil rigs silhouetted against orange dawns. Contract signings with heads of state. Ribbon cuttings beside towering executives. Every image was a hymn to legacy. To empire. To him. Then the MC stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor not just a man, but a movement. The mind and muscle behind Ross and Crane's global ascent. The architect of energy progress for over 4 decades. Please join me in welcoming the Titan himself, Mr. Edgar Ross." The room erupted. People stood, clapping with the vigor of true believers. Some whistled. Others took videos on their phones. A camera zoomed in as he stepped on stage, hand raised in modest acknowledgement, face composed in that familiar expression, gracious, calculated, untouchable. I sat frozen at table 14, champagne glass still clutched in my hand, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break free. He adjusted the mic. "Thank you," he began, voice rich with practiced sincerity. "This night, this moment, it's overwhelming. I never thought a boy from Baton Rouge would end up here, leading one of the most respected energy firms in the world." More applause, a few cheers. He waited for silence, then continued. "I wouldn't be standing here without the backbone of my life. My family, my sons, Ryan and Luke, have carried the Ross name with strength and honor. One serves this nation, one powers it. I couldn't be prouder." Applause again. Ryan stood and gave a brief salute. Luke nodded like he'd just been knighted. The men at their table grinned and clapped. I didn't move, because I knew what was coming. "And of course," he added, "not all children follow the same path. Some wander, explore, take unconventional routes." The audience chuckled lightly, polite, understanding. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. Every head at our table turned slightly toward me. Some smiled awkwardly. One man actually nodded like, "Yeah, you're that one." My fingers curled tighter around the glass. "She's always been imaginative," my father said, the faintest smirk on his lips. "Loved science, loved questions. Still does, I hear. Does something with plants or germs or genes. I don't really keep track." Laughter now. A low, uncomfortable ripple. My mother's hand brushed my arm under the table. I didn't look at her. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped my heart out and left the echo behind. I had spent 20 years building a life of substance, of impact. I had published papers that saved lives, advised environmental commissions, developed treatments for toxin-exposed communities, and to him, I was a girl who played with germs. He moved on quickly, to company milestones, expansion markets, offshore tax structures. The room leaned in again, eager to toast success. But I was already rising to my feet. Not toward the stage, toward the edge of it. The gift was in my hands now, a small box wrapped in deep forest green paper with a simple black ribbon. It looked harmless. He turned, startled. Our eyes met. For the first time in years, I felt taller than him. I held the box up, steady. "From the one who wandered," I said calmly, voice carrying just enough to touch the mic, and I handed it to him. He took it, confused, maybe rattled, but his smile didn't falter. Not yet. The room had gone silent. And then I turned, walked away. Not fast. Not dramatic, just done. My heels tapped on the marble floor like a countdown, not to revenge, to reckoning. The valet lane was nearly empty when I emerged from the ballroom. The soft night air of Savannah brushed against my skin like relief. I stood under a halo of light from the overhang, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, from freedom. I didn't cry, I didn't run. I just waited for my car, feeling lighter than I had in years. Inside the ballroom, I imagined the scene playing out. He'd try to play it cool, laugh it off, tuck the gift into his pocket like it was nothing. But my father was not the kind of man who left questions unanswered. He would open it, eventually, alone. That box held no poison, no public humiliation. It held something far more dangerous to a man like Edgar Ross, the past. A truth he'd buried so deeply, I wasn't sure if even he remembered it existed. Inside was a single photo, framed in walnut. The photo showed a 12-year-old girl in an oversized lab coat, holding a first-place ribbon beside a project titled Biological Remediation of Oil-Contaminated Soil. Standing beside her, a younger Edgar Ross, one hand on her shoulder, the rarest of things on his face, a genuine, unguarded smile. It had been taken at a statewide science fair, one he hadn't wanted to attend. He called it a PR stunt for nerds. But my mom had forced him to come. And when I won? For 5 whole minutes, he had looked proud. Someone had captured that exact moment. I had kept it, hidden for over 2 decades, the one shred of proof that, once, he had seen me. Underneath the photo was a handwritten note. This was the last time you looked at me like I mattered. I've spent 20 years chasing that version of you. I'm done now. No signature. He didn't need one. He would know exactly who gave it, and why. I drove to my hotel with music low and windows half open. My phone buzzed with texts. Ryan, Luke, even Mom. I ignored them all, because the message had been delivered. Not to shame him, not to seek validation. To let go. Let him hold that moment in his hands. Let him decide whether it meant anything. Let him realize, far too late, that the daughter he dismissed was the only one brave enough to hand him the mirror. 3 days later, back in my apartment in Atlanta, the aftermath began to take shape. The media picked up the clip. Just a short video, posted by someone at the event. Me handing him the box. The moment I said, "From the one who wandered." It was vague enough to be intriguing, personal enough to go viral. Thousands of comments poured in. Who is she? What was in the box? That's the calmest takedown I've ever seen. People speculated. Some guessed revenge. Others said inheritance drama. A few called it feminist theater. But none of that mattered. Because only one person truly understood what it meant. And he was the one holding the photo. It came on a Wednesday. I was in the lab, finalizing cell culture protocols for our upcoming toxin neutralization trial, when my phone buzzed with a message I hadn't expected, and somehow had expected all along. Dad, come home. No punctuation, no greeting, just 2 words. I stared at the screen, pulse quickening. Not from fear, from disbelief. He didn't text, he didn't ask. And he sure as hell never said home. For hours, I didn't reply. I let the message sit, like something radioactive. It hummed in my pocket all afternoon, a silent dare, a test. By the time I left work, there were 2 more. Dad, I want to talk. Mom, he's been quiet since the gala, more than usual. Please come. That word again, please. It rattled me more than the silence. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I didn't know what I'd say, but because I didn't know what I wanted to hear. An apology? Closure? Some vague admission that I'd never been the problem? No, I didn't need those anymore. I needed to see the man who raised me and finally understand what he was made of when the applause was gone. So I drove back to Savannah. The house hadn't changed. White columns, symmetrical hedges, a porch light that still flickered, just barely, like a pulse. Everything perfectly in place. Except me. My mother opened the door. She looked exhausted, but relieved. "He's in the den," she whispered, as if the house still demanded reverence. I stepped into the room I grew up in. He was sitting in the same leather chair, still in a collared shirt, though it was unbuttoned at the top. No tie, no scotch in hand. Just the framed photo on the table beside him. He didn't stand, didn't greet me, just nodded once, as if to say, "You came." "I didn't expect this," I said. His eyes didn't move from the frame. "I didn't remember that day." I folded my arms. "That's the difference between you and me. I never forgot." He rubbed his jaw, fingers dragging over old creases. "You think I didn't care?" I laughed once, low, sharp. "You dismissed me." "I respected you," he said quickly. "I just didn't know how to say it." "You didn't need to say it," I replied. "You needed to show up. But I wasn't the kind of success you could brag about at oil conferences, was I? Biology doesn't impress men who build pipelines." He looked at me then, really looked. "You reminded me of my father," he said after a pause. "Smart, critical, always pushing. He thought everything I did was a mistake. And when you started questioning everything, when you refused to follow, I became the threat," I finished. The silence between us stretched until it thinned into something fragile. "I never knew how to raise you," he admitted. "You didn't need me the way the boys did. You didn't want praise, you wanted truth." I met his eyes. "You call that truth? You mocked me in front of 200 people." He flinched. "I didn't mean to," he said. "But you did." Another pause. Then, the softest thing I'd ever heard from him. "I was proud of you that day," he said, nodding to the photo. "But I didn't know what to do with the feeling, so I buried it." "And what now?" I asked. "Why call me back?" He took a breath. "Because the world saw what you gave me, but only I knew what it meant." He lifted the photo, tracing the frame. "You could have torched me, humiliated me, but instead, you gave me memory, and now I can't stop remembering." I stepped back. Tears stung, but I didn't let them fall. "I didn't come for forgiveness," I whispered. "I came to say, I'm done chasing it." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe we can both stop pretending." Not lessened, not lifted temporarily. Gone. It hadn't vanished in a single moment. No dramatic scream, no cathartic breakdown. It left quietly, like a tenant who'd finally packed up and slipped out in the night, leaving nothing behind but space. For the first time in my adult life, I could breathe without bracing. Back in Atlanta, the lab buzzed with life. Our research on gene-coded soil microbes, capable of reversing decades of chemical contamination, had passed Phase 3 trials. Grant approvals were coming in, publications were pending. And I was back where I belonged. Not tolerated, not creative, not a shadow behind brothers in pressed uniforms. I was Camille, PhD in biological systems, lead investigator, mentor, builder of futures. One afternoon, my department chair stopped by my office, tapping on the doorframe. "You're still confirmed for the keynote at the Women in STEM conference next month, right?" I looked up, startled. "Oh, wow. Yes, I hadn't realized it was so soon." She smiled. "We've never had a speaker with your credentials and your story. You've got something the next generation needs to hear." I knew what she meant. Not the data, the invisible part, the childhood that never clapped, the evenings I spent proving myself to ghosts, the resilience born from silence. That night I sat on my balcony, laptop open on my knees, the lights of the city flickering like fireflies below. The screen was blank for a long time. And then the first sentence came, crisp, undeniable. "Sometimes the fuel that launches you isn't admiration, it's rejection." From there, the words poured out. I told the truth about growing up in a house where intelligence wasn't enough if it didn't wear a uniform, where daughters didn't get legacy speeches, where some wins earned only quiet nods, or worse, indifference. But I also told them this: there is power in being underestimated. There is strength in not being seen. until you decide to be undeniable. The speech wasn't angry. It was clean, quiet, like the stillness that comes after a storm has finally passed. When I finished, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. The clarity of someone no longer trying to fit inside a story written for someone else. It arrived on a Thursday, tucked between a lab equipment invoice and a pizza coupon. A small white envelope, hand-addressed, no return label. I knew the handwriting. It was his. I sat down at my desk, heart steady, not braced this time, just present. Inside the envelope was the photo I'd given him, the one of 12-year-old me, blue ribbon in hand, his arm awkwardly across my shoulder, a rare, unguarded smile on his face. That moment I thought I'd imagined, that he claimed not to remember. But now, on the back, there were new words, written in block letters, measured and slow, like they'd taken effort. I didn't forget this day. I tried to, because it scared me how much I loved that version of you. You deserved more than I gave. I'm sorry. That was all. No warm closing, no love, Dad, no explanations, no excuses, just a fragment of truth, finally uncloaked. And it was enough. Not because it healed every wound. It didn't. Not because it erased the years of silence. It couldn't. But because, for once, he saw what he broke. And maybe, just maybe, he regretted it. I placed the photo in a new folder. Not in the old drawer, the one where I used to keep every generic birthday card, every best wishes Edgar signature that read like a colleague instead of a father. That drawer didn't hold pain anymore. It held perspective. Because that's what healing actually is. It's not thunder. It's not flame. It's not a victory march through applause. Healing is Tuesday mail. It's block letters on the back of a photo. It's silence that doesn't ache anymore. 3 months passed. My speech from the Women in STEM Summit was shared hundreds of thousands of times, among biology students, tech startup founders, parenting forums, and quiet daughters like me, who had grown up invisible. I didn't read every comment. But one message caught me. It was from Lena Carter, my cousin, my father's sister's daughter. We hadn't spoken since we were kids. Her message read, "I saw the clip, I cried. My dad treated me the same. Always said girls weren't built for leadership. I never had the courage to speak up, but you showed me it's not too late to rewrite the story." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed one line in response. It's never too late to stop shrinking. A year later, I stood on a panel at the University of Georgia, speaking to a room full of young women, most of them first-generation college students, all of them hungry to be seen. One girl raised her hand. She couldn't have been more than 19 and Dachstöring. "Ross," she asked, "how do you know when it's time to stop proving yourself to someone who'll never approve of you?" I smiled, the kind that comes from the other side of something. "I didn't know," I said. "I just woke up one day and realized I already had my own approval." The room was still, and in that stillness, I knew. This story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every girl who built herself from rejection, to every daughter who learned to walk away, not with bitterness, but with clarity, to everyone who understood that some legacies aren't worth carrying.